In today's video, we are going to go crazy. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today I want to talk about the quilt you see here, which is, of course, a crazy quilt project. So this is Glowing Jewels. This is my entry in the Island Boutique Ambassador Threaded Chaos blog happening right now in September 2025 when I'm filming this video. So this challenge was to create a project using crazy quilt blocks. It's sponsored by Aurifil, so thanks so much to Aurifil for providing me with the thread I used to create the decorative stitches on this project. Thanks also to Island Boutique of Lumen Fabrics and all their other sponsors who also donated items that I used to make this quilt. Now let's take a closer look at this quilt and let me explain what my thinking process was in creating it. So whenever I have this challenge as an Island Boutique ambassador, my goal is to use as many fabrics from whatever line I'm working with, and this is the Geode Glow line that I'm working with. Brand new collection, so check out your local quilt shop. And I'm always trying to use as many fabrics, if not all the fabrics, in that collection to show them off, of course. So in this particular collection, there were 20 different fabrics. So I have 20 blocks in this quilt so that I could highlight every single fabric in the Geode Glow collection in each of the blocks. So each of the blocks has a center design. I know it doesn't look like the center here, but it was actually the first piece I started with. And there is a different one in each of these blocks. Now, let me talk a little bit more about the blocks themselves. I created these on an embroidery machine, so it's all machine embroidery, including the decorative stitches. It's a quilt as you go method, but I did it a little bit differently, so I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But what I did was I've got the same block in each, same pattern, I guess you'd say, in each of the blocks, same design in each of the blocks, same decorative stitches in each of the blocks, although I may have used a different thread color in them, so I switched up my thread colors. And as I said, I've used these different fabrics in each of the blocks so that you can see them. Now, the blocks also kind of don't look like they're the same block, and that's because I rotated them, all right? So you can see, if you look at this piece here, you can see it's here. I've rotated the block so it's in that direction, this direction, and that direction. So they've all been moved around a little bit, so the blocks do look like they're all kind of different, right? Unless you take a really close look. So I mentioned that I use the quilt as you go method to do this, and I often do this just with the fabrics on top and the batting and not the backing, and that's what I did in this particular case. And I'm going to talk about some of the things I might have done a little differently in a few moments, but one of the things that I did with this project is I added sashing in between the blocks because I thought just by putting them close to, right next to each other, it'd be a little overwhelming and it wouldn't really show off the fabric. So I wanted to add sashing. So I did that, and the technique I used is from Pauline Rogers' Quilt As You Go handbook. You can also find a YouTube video on how she does sashing on what she calls a back-to-back method. And that's what I did here. So a few things. When I did that, I needed to have a backing on the blocks. So what I did is I cut out backings, individual backings for each of the blocks. I used the same fabric, so on the back it looks, pretty much like one fabric. But I did that before I added the sashings between the blocks, and then of course once each of those rows were done, I added the sashing between the rows. And I think it worked out really well because it does allow the individual blocks to shine. So what that does, I'll show you the back, is that you can see you have a nice clean back. So I've got my stitching here. This is when I put on the sashing, but you can see there's no quilting in there, all right? So I don't see all the decorative stitches that I did on the back. So I kind of like that look, but there's a caveat if you do this, all right? So these blocks are less than 7 inches in size, all right? So they're not huge. You can see I can put my hand over them. So that's kind of my rule of thumb, rule of hand. If I can, when I put my hand down there, I don't need to quilt in there. I need to quilt, anything bigger than that, okay? So if, for example, I had 10-inch blocks in here, I would have had to do some additional quilting in here, so I might have just gone in and done some, inside echo quilting on those shapes just to adhere the backing to it. So I like that, gives me a nice clean back, but I did have to cut those individual pieces to add backing to all of the individual blocks. Now, I also, of course, added borders, And I had to quilt those first before I added them because it's quilt as you go. So for those, I actually did the top, the batting, and the backing, all right? Because there's only one line of stitching on the back. You can see this one a little bit here, that you've just got that one line of stitching. So that worked out fine. And then I did a machine binding on the edges. And actually, I know you won't be able to see it because I use matching thread. I've used a serpentine stitch to do that. Again, you probably can't see it very well, but there's a serpentine stitch, so I thought, you know, I've got a lot of decorative stitches going on here. Why not add another one when I put the binding on? So it turned out really well. I love the colors in it, the purples, the warm golds. It looks really beautiful. Now, before I talk about some of the things I might have done a little differently, I wanted to say a big thank you and give a shout out to my Patchwork Pals. Those are people who are in my Patchwork Pals YouTube membership. And for a small monthly fee, they get lots of perks, one of which is early access to all my videos. So if you're interested in supporting the Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel, please click on the join button you'll find below any of my videos, and you can get all the details and even become a Patchwork Pal today. Now, some of the things I would have done a little differently on this. Well, I probably would have put the backing on, maybe, when I did these individual blocks. It would have saved me an additional step. I would have seen all the decorative stitches on the back, so, you know, not so sure about that one. But definitely it would have saved me a step because I had to go and cut 20 extra squares before I could actually add the sashing in. The other thing I might have done is I might have done a little bit more quilting in the borders. I think it looks okay. There's decorative stitches, and they're all different decorative stitches here, but I could have added maybe another line of stitching if I wanted to. But of course, that's the fun of doing projects like this and challenging yourself, is you learn things. I had never done this technique of adding sashing to Quilt As You Go blocks before, using Pauline's technique. And also, you may find some things that, you know, afterwards you go, maybe I would have done something a little differently. And you can carry that forward to your next project. Now, I've talked about this technique of adding sashing that I got from Pauline Rogers' book. However, you might be wondering, is there another way to join Quilt As You Go blocks? Well, yes, there is. And I have a video on that. So don't worry, I got you covered. All the details you're looking for are in this video here. And for more helpful quilting information, go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.